In this video, we are talking about the future of the Magic Key program. Things are not looking good, y'all. We're going to talk about it up next.
Welcome to Orange Grove 55.
Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. In this video, we're talking about the future of the Magic Key program, which as of right now is on shaky ground. Pretty shaky ground. Okay, it's not looking so good, fam. It's not looking so good. But before we dive into that, I want to introduce my fantastic guest, my collaborator, my producer, Mr. Dre Bash Guy, host of Freshly Squeezed. Welcome back to the channel, my man.
Hey, I am happy to be back. This was a very interesting topic. I know a lot of YouTube channels have been covering it, and we kind of haven't. We kind of been staying back a little bit, and I've been kind of getting, word from some of my sources and so forth. What's going on here? So I think this is going to be a really good discussion. Hopefully, it provides some clarity. Maybe not what will happen, but maybe why things haven't happened yet, which might motivate what will happen in the future. So hopefully our viewers will be very informed by our discussion. But before we get to that, if you want to interact with me, you can go ahead and do so right down there at VashGuy. Type it in Twitter and should pop up for, as Christine Wastelands McCarthy would say,
for all the robust
discussion. You can go ahead and do so right down there. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. And that's a very, I think that's that little chime there is very apropos for what we're talking about right now. So, yeah. OG, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
All right, let's dive right in. So, Dave of Fresh Baked fame did a great video the other day about the Magic Key class action lawsuit. So, to kind of set the table, we're going to play a little clip from his show. And then we're going to dive into this because this is fascinating stuff here. This is game-changing kind of things going on. I don't think this is going to be as smooth of a transition as a lot of people were hoping, and I think Dave kind of alludes to that. So let's listen to him, and then we'll go from there.
Right, and it's important to start out with the lawsuit because that might be a bigger motivating factor, more than people might think. So let's go ahead and see what he has for his update.
Yep.
Let's see right there.
We're going to start with a little bit of info that we've learned about the Magic Key lawsuit. Many have speculated that the reason that we're still not able to renew our Magic Keys is because Disney's still looking or waiting for some kind of resolution on the Magic Key lawsuit, myself included. But if that is the case, then we may be waiting for quite a while because we are nowhere near close to this thing seeing the actual inside of a courtroom. Now, the suit seeks to be a class action lawsuit, and in order for that to happen, a judge must first certify that it can be filed as a class action lawsuit. Now, we've heard that the hearing for this, the hearing where the judge certifies whether or not this case can be brought as a class action lawsuit, is not going to be scheduled until January of 2023. We've also learned that once that does happen, if it does happen, the actual court date isn't scheduled until June of 2023. That's almost a year from now, almost 2 years since the keys first started going on sale.
That's a long time. That's a long time. I think a lot of people were hoping that this lawsuit was going to be handled or maybe even settled far sooner than this, but it doesn't seem like the plaintiff or the plaintiff's attorneys are balking here. They're not. It doesn't seem like they're very motivated to seek a settlement agreement, which suggests that there's a very real possibility that this does go to trial, and if it does, well, that doesn't get handled at least until the start of June, and then. How long does the trial actually take? We could be in here for the long haul. We might be, standing here or sitting here, right, talking about this this time next year. That's how long this might actually be going on. So, not really the word that I think annual pass holders wanted to hear, especially right now since renewals aren't currently an option. And that's that's got a lot of people a little bit, and rightfully so, kind of scared about what the future might hold.
Now, in terms of the class action, Dave mentioned like it's not officially a class action until January, right, of 2023.
Yes, yeah, and that's if the like you said, like if the judge actually grants that motion that it become a class action through. It's the judicial discretion in terms of that.
So this would be from now until then would be the time that Disney would kind of have to woo this plaintiff, right, to kind of get them on board to settle before that class action potentially goes into effect in January.
Right.
So now's the time Disney's probably like, all right, how much you want?
I mean, and that's kind of it too, and the reason why they would be motivated to do such a thing, as you astutely pointed out, I think they do want to go ahead and do that, is because, well, if this does go through, well, then, there's certain, items, there's certain consequences that come from that, mainly being those of discovery. In order for the plaintiffs to actually, have a case, they had to get access to discovery and Disney's internal documents and filings and messages and internal communications regarding the Magic Key program and how they actually, determined what those buckets were going to be, what the level of access that they actually received in terms of like hard numbers and so forth. These are all things that I'm sure Disney and Team Disney Anaheim and everybody involved they don't want to come to light, because this is obviously this is a public trial. This is this is something that's going to be heavily followed, heavily tracked, and they don't want any of this internal communication and so forth, any of these proprietary systems and everything attached to the Magic Key program coming to light in a public way like this. This is kind of a fascinating thing here.
Well, yeah, you don't want it going public. Not to say they're doing anything necessarily wrong, but it would be bad optics.
Oh, yes.
For any business, really. I mean, if you were to open the door of transparency to Universal or Fox or any other studio or any business, really, and kind of provide the public with the internal discussions about various business practices, what have you, it can be a potentially embarrassing thing, because what you would find in, like, say for this instance, like the Disneyland Magic Key program, is you would see these Disney executives talking back and forth about, well, I don't know, these Magic Keys, they come into the parks for 2 hours and they leave. They don't really spend that much money. We got to mitigate this. We got to rein these people in, or, stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
You don't want that, even though technically we all know those conversations go on behind closed doors. We all know that's the case. We all know it's a business. It's still embarrassing, though, right? It's still
absolutely
embarrassing.
Oh, it's absolutely embarrassing. It's absolutely not a good look, and it's something that Disney's going to want to avoid. And I'll say this, Discovery, it can be a very interesting thing. There's a certain case going on right now between, I believe, Google and a video platform called Rumble that, Rumble is suing for tens of billions of dollars as it relates to their video platform, and they won Discovery when it came to certain, Google features when it came to, not only because they have an incredible market share, but apparently the allegation was that they were utilizing their tools to not allow Rumble to come up first on search results. Instead, they were opting for YouTube services and so forth. Well, the judge granted basically all the discovery that Rumble wanted. So that's going to be a very kind of interesting lawsuit. And we're seeing this more and more, especially from tech firms and so forth. So again, this can get really dicey really, really fast. And I think Disney is wanting to avoid that, because and that's kind of one of the biggest problems that I've had with the Magic Key system itself, or these reservations themselves, is we don't really know the ratios. We don't really know what metrics Disney's using internally. We don't know how they're allocating these various buckets and the various times that they do. We kind of suspect that maybe the ratios change on the weekends or holidays or peak times, or on the weekdays and so forth. But we don't actually have any hard numbers or pretty much any information regarding how they delineate delineate between the various buckets in that process. But with Discovery, conceivably you'd be granted to all those kind of things, including, maybe not even limited to, the changes that maybe Disney made after the lawsuit was filed. As people will know, when that lawsuit was filed, the ratio started to change. Magic Key holders had a growing level of access after that lawsuit was filed, and it was very kind of curious. Before that, access was limited, but then access opened up widely. So do we get maybe discovery in regards to that issue and so forth? I mean, it's going to be a very kind of interesting thing, but that all kind of leads to what is going on now. And I think the lawsuit plays a heavy part into why people can't initially renew. But go ahead, OG. Your thoughts on all of that.
Well, the ratio stuff, I don't know. That's something that like I'm not 100% on board with. I don't necessarily feel Disney is obligated to provide those ratios. It's kind of like, for example, no one really expects that level of transparency with literally anything else. Like if I sign up for a gym membership, like I don't demand that the gym tell me the capacity for the building and the ratios for what the potential of like my chances of getting into the gym on a Tuesday, and like no one does that. Like, and so I don't really understand why it would be expected of Disney to do that. Like even like lately, like the other day I called my dentist and I was trying to make an appointment and they told me they're booked until October. I'm not going to like go like, well, okay, well, how many patients does the dentist take a day? What's the ratios for the, you know what I'm saying? I just feel like Magic Key holders are being a little bit crazy with that. Like it's full. Like I don't think that Magic Keys need any more clarity than that. If it's booked, it's booked, in my opinion. If you don't like, you know?
I understand that. I get you. And look, if everybody was being above board, I would say to you, yeah, you know, that's why put so much emphasis on this issue. But it's a sliding scale. It's determined per day. You know, honestly, I mean, this is kind of one of the reasons why I told people, hey, maybe hold off on buying a Magic Key, at least initially, because you're kind of buying into a black box system. You don't really know the level of access that you're going to actually have or that will be available to you until the actual month shows up, day shows up, or whatever, and you try to, book a reservation for that day. I think the big issue that people have, and it's one that I'm very sympathetic to, is you're paying $1,500 for conceivably 365 days of access, but it's only at Disney's discretion, and there really is no way of determining not only the value of that purchase, but you know how much of that you're actually going to get out of it. Look, if there's a movie theater, right? That auditorium is, you know, has a certain number of capacity, right? And as theaters have transitioned, you now buy your tickets in advance, and you can see the actual seats themselves. You buy that seat, and you're good to go. You can also see the seats around you, and if in fact they themselves have been purchased. In that scenario, it's kind of a very transparent system. You know basically how full that theater is going to be before you even show up. In this way, you're buying into this kind of almost membership program, and you don't know if you're going to ever get access to the club, essentially. You know, and I think they're the level of non-transparency, I think, is what people have the biggest issue with, because again, I mean, you know, going to the dentist's office, apparently, you know, there is an incentive there to have you in there. So it's not really a thing where it's like they're trying to maybe deny you access. When it comes to annual pass holders, kind of everybody knows the dynamic and how it exists, and how Disney, you know, is looking to, let's say,
mitigate,
control that population. Yes.
No, that's true. Yeah, because the annual pass holders, and I know a lot of other content creators, they say otherwise, but I'm going to die on this hill. The Magic Keys and the annual passes are not, I don't think, as lucrative as people want to believe they are. And I think that's why Disney is kind of like, you know, that's why they're limiting that access, like you said, Dre, because, and look, I'm guilty of this. I'm not trying to like, you know, throw shade at anybody, because I'm just as guilty as every other pass holder on this. Sure. But a lot of us go to these parks, you know, for 3 and 4 hours. We buy maybe one meal, and maybe you'll buy the new popcorn bucket and you leave. Now you reserved that whole day and you were only there for 3 or 4 hours and you bought maybe $55 worth of stuff. Not a big win for Disney. Okay. Not a big win for Disney. And it's, yes, the key holders are big in physical numbers. There's a lot of us, but bodies for the sake of bodies. And I've said this before on the channel many times, it doesn't do Disney any good. Just filling the room with bodies that aren't spending any money doesn't do Disney any good. So you're right, Dre. There is an incentive on their part to mitigate those people from coming in because they just aren't spending the money like that family from Japan, like that family from Arkansas, whatever, that's coming for that one-time visit in a lifetime, and they're going to spend thousands, you know?
Yeah, and that's a perfect point right there. It's not that annual pass holders don't spend any money at all. Right. And some annual pass holders might end up spending a lot of money over the course of the year. But we all know that ticket holders, I mean, a large segment of ticket holders will spend what annual pass holders spend in a year per day. And that's the kind of the difference there. And that's why it's like, okay, well, if we have a certain number of capacity, fixed capacity, we can't increase it anymore. Then, and the demand is outrageously high, then we, you know, is it in our best interest to delineate between, you know, who comes in, who doesn't? And on the surface, I think it's a fair kind of assessment to make, and you can implement policies in order to do that. I just think that this kind of the way in which they did do that with the Magic Key program wasn't the best way to do it, because I think I think them going into it was. And look, I've heard this for years. I mean, OG, we just had this conversation. You've heard this for years as well. They want to better control the annual pass of the population. Oh, yeah. And years before this kind of sweeping reservation system actually came about, after the events of 2020 and 2021, the way I heard that they were going to do that was by basically hook or by crook. They were going to do that whether it be through, you know, increasing prices or a set limit on how many annual passes that they sold. And this was back long before 2017, 2016. I mean, I was hearing this for quite a while. And it was a little bit like, ooh, big shock to the system. But then that dynamic, that paradigm changed when the reservation systems were introduced. Now it's like, oh, well, wait a minute. We don't have to necessarily control how many annual passes that we sell. We just have to control how much access that they receive.
Right.
And so it was like, okay, well, we can have our cake and eat it too. We can sell as many Magic Keys or annual passes that we want, and then adjust that sliding ratio, as we see fit. And that was right on the precipice of the busy holiday season, where there's some incentive there to maybe relinquish only so many spots for annual pass holders or Magic Key holders, and so many towards tourists, right? Because that's a big tourist season. People are coming from all over the world and take advantage of those holiday offerings. And that's when people were like, whoa. I bought into the system, and yet I'm not going to get access for how long, you know? And for a lot of the holiday months, a lot of people were booked out, and that's when a lot of the complaints came in. And unfortunately, that's when this lawsuit was actually filed, because people were, I think there was some expectation on the level of access that people would receive. Now, I knew, looking at Walt Disney World and how those ratios are entirely different than they are in Disneyland, how they don't have nearly as many annual pass holders per park, let's say. I knew they were having problems out there. I said, that we're going to have major problems here, because we only have 2 parks, and we have a far bigger annual pass holder population per park. So I knew that was going to be an issue. Well, some people didn't. They maybe expected more. And unfortunately, Disney was pretty aggressive with how they relinquished those reservations. And unfortunately, that may have gotten them in a little bit of a trouble.
Well, and that's the thing, too. And I know we talked about this even before the Magic Key official rollout and everything, where anytime you have a reservation system, it's a blockout system. A blockout date system. So like you can have the highest pass with no blockout dates, but if you're required to make a reservation to get in the parks, it's a blockout. Like you're inevitably going to have a day where it's full.
Yes.
You
I
know?
mean, my mother's very funny. When when she initially looked at the magic key system, she's like, "That's not a magic key. That's a magical lock." And she was very astute. She knew what was going on. She knew what was coming up, and sure enough, a lot of people found themselves, like you said, OG, locked out. Or blocked out more than maybe the level of access than they had originally anticipated, and that sparked a lot of consternation, discussion, what have you, and that was the kind of the impetus for the entire lawsuit itself. But now we're kind of back in that same scenario here. We're back in that same loop, right? We're in August. We're looking at that calendar. We're looking at all these holiday offerings. In fact, just yesterday, Disneyland announced the new, the returning holiday offerings with some more or less stuff or whatever. And so they have basically everything mapped out going into December, and that's a high peak time. And now Disney has a decision to make. It's like, okay, well, we can have people renew just as we did before, right? And no terms of service changes or whatever. Just basically debut the next round of magic keys for the year, and maybe you can do with a price increase or whatever, and have people go there. Well, we know that they can't make the same mistake that they did before. They can't withhold so many annual pass holders from actually coming, or else we're going to have this same kind of spiral cyclical cycle again. So it's like, okay, well, that's off the limit. So do we give annual pass holders the ability to renew right now, and do we have a greater level of access than we afforded them last year? Well, then that's going to hurt revenue. That's going to hurt things in a quarter that I think Disney wants. I think Disney wants 2023 Q1 to be just outrageous, and that starts October 1st, October, November, December. They want that quarter to be just massive. So do you necessarily want to hurt the tourism market by allowing so many annual pass holders to go? And it's like, we don't necessarily want to do that either. So it's like, okay, well, what if we debut the system with new terms of service? Well, that's a problem too, because now if you debut the system with new terms of service, that might not look so good on your lawsuit. Any plaintiff's attorney in this thing, worth any of their salt, is going to look at that and go, see, judge, they knew there was a problem because they're looking to rectify it now. That's why my client has been aggrieved. That's why we're entitled to so much of an award or whatever. It's like that's gonna look bad if they change terms of service now. It's like, well, yes, but now what do we do? And I think that's why this has gone on with Disney themselves not knowing what to really do, because every single option has caveats and consequences. No, there's no one position where Disney comes out on top in all ways. So what do you give up? I think that's the issue. There's also another option where they just, not allow people to renew until January, which, from what we have heard, from kind of our sources and people who kind of know a little bit more about this or are a little bit closer to this than we are, we have heard that January might be the month. January 1st specifically, when there will be another kind of round of sweeping changes in regards to reservations. We have heard that maybe reservations don't exist for ticket holders, but maybe they still exist for annual pass holders. So what better way in order to kind of make that clear than debuting the system? Maybe with some of these changes kind of outlined, saying, hey, look, if you're going with the AP system, fine, but you're going to be subject to reservations, ticket holders won't be, then in January. It's an interesting idea, but now you have 4 months there where annual pass holders might not have an option to get in via a pass.
Yeah, it would basically be the same as when they reopened the parks in April, and then we didn't have the passes until like August. It would be like that same situation essentially, and Disney has already dealt with that once before.
Yes.
So maybe Disney feels like, okay, we've done it before. We're a little more prepared now to deal with that. They might heavily discount like day tickets and things like that to kind of offset. But that's a definite possibility. And I think that's actually probably the most likely scenario where there is a gap. There is a gap between when your pass expires and when the new program starts. I think that's there's a very strong likelihood that happens. I think that if we were to have a new system ready to go out the gate, hitting the ground running, I think you would have heard about it by now. It's already August. It's already August. This is when the Magic Key program premiered last year, was August.
Literally August 25th was when the the Magic Key system premiered, and we still don't have an update. Now, a lot of people were thinking, a lot of people had this expectation that we would know something around that renewal window, right? I think they gave you anywhere between 30 to 45 days, at least historically, to renew. And so people were thinking, okay, yeah, late July, that's when that's going to come up, but it hasn't yet. And it's interesting too. You shared this with our DM here. No, we'll go ahead and go through with this as well. So Cole McCarthy says here on Twitter, Magic Key renewal message has changed via the chat on Disneyland app. See image for text previously provided on July 26th versus today. So on July 26th or...
That was August. Okay,
yeah. So this is July 26th right here. Sorry, a little bit backwards. Hi there. This summer, we will offer all current Magic Key holders who are in the renewal window the opportunity to renew into one of several passes available in the program, which suggests that they'll be able to renew within this kind of renewal window as previously established, right? That we'll hear something about it in August, essentially, right? We will share details about renewal at a later date. Okay, cool. Now, this is August 2nd here. Hi there, Cole. Thank you for being a Magic Key holder. Magic Key passes are unavailable for new sales at this time. Renewals are not currently available for any pass type. Currently, there is no additional information that can be provided at this time. Keep jumping back on the Disneyland Resort website for future announcements. That's not good. that has changed considerably. The first message alluded to something being done within that renewal window, with something being done in August. But now August has come, and now they're saying that they don't have any information to share whatsoever, which suggests that maybe, it obviously suggests that there is a little bit of internal debate right now in terms of what wants to actually happen here. But the other key thing is maybe, this renewal window has been pushed back.
Oh, yeah.
We did hear a couple days ago that the legacy pass holder language did return in some code and some screens and so forth. Maybe that language is returning for a reason.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm telling you, I think there will be an absolute gap in between when these passes expire and when you're able to actually renew. And it could be a few months, might even be longer than the time that we saw before between April and August. There might be a bigger gap. I mean, I think that look, this is different than the reopening in April, because this is a legal issue now. This is something that Disney has to dance around legally. It's not just like making Magic Key people happy or figuring out a good program. This goes well beyond that now. This is a legal issue. Disney can't mess this up. Going like whenever they announce a new program, they can't mess this up because they could potentially be in a world of hurt legally.
Yes.
So they're gonna if they have to eat it a little bit for a few months to make sure they don't eat it legally, they probably will. They probably will.
Will. Disney's all about control, and there are things outside of their control that are affecting the decisions that they're implementing and affecting pass holders as a result, just realistically. Now, there are maybe some terms of service changes that they could undergo that might alleviate some of these things without necessarily getting into the issue of affecting the lawsuit, right? One of those things I think is a big thing here could be parking. Now, just because you get access to the park doesn't mean necessarily that you have free or included access to the parking structures. or parking lots. And if they adjust that policy, maybe that might affect visitation patterns as a result. And maybe the access portion of it would work itself out. Now, that wouldn't hurt the lawsuit at all because you're talking about something else separate from Disneyland's access.
It's ancillary
that's
stuff.
that's the thing most at contention there. So that's that. I think that's a kind of a them affecting the parking and the included pricing options as it relates to Magic Keys and so forth, specifically Dream Key, and I believe the Imagine Key has half price parking. That could be at issue here, and I think that's a look for that for sure. The other thing too, we just saw Disneyland Paris implement a kind of a reservation waiting list, right, where people could get on themselves on a waiting list. I believe after they select a certain date that they might want, that might be blocked out via the reservation system. Just there's no availability there. Be on that waiting list, and hey, it may be a first come first serve. If something opens up, they get an email or some communication via Disney, and they tell you, hey, look, reservations available, open. You can go ahead and select something there. That might help out if you're reducing the kind of bucket size, right? Because then at least people feel that there's maybe there's some hope there that they still could get in that day. That's an interesting option as well. It wouldn't necessarily affect the terms of service as it relates to the lawsuit either. There's a couple of avenues here that Disney can go. It's just going to be interesting to see, do they deal with any of this at all, at least this year, or do they just hold off on renewals, period? Maybe has been theorized by some. Wait until January and debut a new system with a term of service change that might, say, hey, look, listen, this does not necessarily afford you access. Or guarantee you access, I should say, if you buy into this pass. And maybe things regarding the lawsuit had changed in their favor leading up to that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and another thing we talked about on the phone today, which might be an option, is a lot of other amusement parks and theme parks and what have you, they offer season passes. They don't offer annual passes. Disney is kind of unique in that it offers a whole year worth for these pass holders. A lot of other entities don't do that. I know like Six Flags, they do like a season pass. Maybe Disney, they don't want to lose like the pass holder visitation during those off months, so they only offer these passes for the off season. So you can get your season pass from January until May. It's only like a 5 or 6 month pass instead of offering you the entire year. That way in the summer and the busy holiday time, Disney can get those day ticketers, the travelers, the tourism dollars and all that. And then the off season, when they need people to fill the parks, then that's when they allow the locals to come in and kind of take over. That's an option too. And I know a lot of people will probably hate that, but I mean, that's, look, you have to understand, like Disney's going through this with their lawyers. They're looking for every loophole and every way around this stuff to stay out of hot water. Everything is on the table right now. Everything is on the table.
I believe it is. And I will say, with how the blackout days were structured and so forth, that's kind of what Disney had before. And I think they wanted to take that one step further with the various buckets, right? Maybe open up the buckets a little bit wider during some months, some days, that kind of thing. And then they could have a more finite control over who came in and who didn't, so to speak. It's an interesting idea because, to kind of make that the expectation and, going forward. We're not going to have maybe an annual pass. We're going to have a season pass. It's a very interesting thing, and I think that would alleviate a lot of their problems, at least that they're experiencing on the back end here. It's a very interesting proposition. And it's... There's not a lot of good options here, and annual pass holders and so forth are caught in the balance here. There's also some other issues facing Disney regarding their various annual pass options at their various resorts. That is kind of another thing that you have to keep an eye on as well. Obviously, we're entering into some kind of economic rocky territory, right? So you want this kind of backfill, this kind of this annual pass holder program in your back pocket, at least to have people be able to access the parks when maybe others can't. Tourist visitation maybe falls off because of the price of gas, price of fuel, price of flights, the price of travel, whatever. And that way, you have annual pass holders to kind of rely on when it comes to consistent visitation, right? So it's like you don't want to necessarily
like nuke it.
Yes, you don't want to nuke the program, and you don't want to necessarily, throw this kind of stuff in your various annual pass holders' faces. But it is one of those things where it's like, yeah, but Disneyland, 75% of its annual visitation comes from people within 250 miles, and they can often overwhelm the parks, especially when there's a new product, released, or a new, ride that comes online and so forth. I mean, we definitely have to have a little bit more control over the annual pass holder population, and I get that, but the way they have gone about it so far has been completely bizarre. I think the one thing that would help out a lot of these issues and would help mitigate this problem for Disney is the damn annual, the monthly payment options. I mean, that's really what's hurting them kind of the most. And you made an astute observation. When did that come out? That came out in 2008. Now, I understand there were economic factors at play there, which might provide a reason why they actually went forward with that system. But that was also during the administration of a certain CEO that now, again, Chapek and the rest of his team have to deal with.
Right. Yeah, I know. And I know a lot of people get upset when we mention Bob Iger, because he's like the anointed one, right? He's like the holy one who, he every decision this man made was perfect, just awesome. But it really wasn't, you guys. To be in all seriousness, there was a lot of stuff that Bob Iger, the seeds that Bob Iger planted, are coming to term now. And Bob Chapek's going to have to deal with that. And one of those seeds is this monthly payment programs for the annual pass holders. And I know a lot of people, they don't like to acknowledge that. They want to kind of live in this world where it's like every man, woman, and child should have access to a Disney park at any time they want. It's like, yeah. But that's the thing. It doesn't really, like, reality doesn't really work that way. You have to understand that, like, it ruins the guest experience. Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't say I want every man, woman, and child to experience a Disney park, make it affordable and cheap, and then when you get in the park, complain that it's too crowded. You're gonna have to give or take. And I think that there has to be some level of barrier to entry for these places. The demand is just way too high, and this monthly payment program has really diminished the guest experience over the years. It's been way too congested, way too crowded. You have a pass that's like $1,500 for the year. And when you break that down into monthly payments, like for 12 months, it's really, really affordable. And everyone jumped into that system. And now you have this monster that you can't control. You get rid of that monthly payment system, even for just a few of the tiers, and you mitigate this problem drastically. I don't know why Disney doesn't jump on that.
I have no idea, because, I like to think of it this way. The problem is the supply of milk. So right. I think they have an idea, sell by the bottle. Great. But then why are we making it easier to buy the cow? It doesn't quite make sense here. I mean, you have an incredible... Let's be honest. You have an incredible annual pass holder population, and you have to. Not everybody can visit at the same time. I mean, there must be some kind of control there, right. Especially right now. With their problems when it comes to staffing and so forth. I mean, look, if they could settle this thing out of court and kind of concede the point regarding reservations, and avoid. Potential, discovery or against litigation and so forth, I think they would. But they couldn't, even if they wanted to, because like you said, demand is so high. And let's just be honest, their facilities and with supply issues and with labor issues and so forth, they're just not at that level in order to completely saturate these parks in the way that they in the way that they want and the way that they would need to if they ever got rid of the reservation system. It's just not a reality right now, like you said.
Is that something that maybe they can make their case to the judge and say, look, we can rectify this, we can fix this, but logistically we just can't? Is that something they can kind of plead their case to a court and say, look, I mean, we could reverse this, but we don't have the staffing to do it. We don't have the logistics to actually do it. You know, is there a way they can kind of plead that case legally?
Potentially, but it still doesn't rectify the issue, with this aggrieved party, essentially, right? You can change going forward, and you can make that case to the judge, but the damages were still rendered as far as the plaintiffs were concerned. So that's kind of the issue right there. So, I mean, maybe, possibly, and for settlement reasons, maybe you do make that case there, but
yeah,
it's, I mean, good luck. It seems to me that, there's some rumors as far as the kind of attorney outfit that is actually representing the plaintiffs on this case. There's some allegations that maybe it's a consortium of travel, lodging, and tourist industry leaders, essentially, that have kind of banded together and are wanting to have this reservation system go away because it kind of affects maybe their bottom lines when it comes to hotel occupancy and other tourist destinations and so forth that kind of benefit from from the previous arrangement as it was established, right? And so if that is the case, what's really the incentive to settle outside of getting rid of the reservation system itself? It's a really kind of interesting thing. And if it's something that Disney can't do, then there's no settlement to be had, essentially. It's just, okay, well then we'll go forward and have all your dirty laundry out there for the public to see. I mean, it's an interesting thing. Disney has gotten themselves in a lot of trouble, and honestly, it's one of their making. Like you said, I mean, a lot of this could have been mitigated had they just got rid of the monthly payment program. I mean, once the monthly payment program was established, that's when things really ballooned to crazy proportions. And there have been people, even annual pass holders themselves, who have said, you got to get rid of this thing because it's just, everybody and their brother and sister can afford it. And that's causing havoc for this, this park that only has a set capacity. It's nowhere near like Walt Disney World, and that's kind of the big distinction, right? Because I just got confirmation from somebody out there that yes, you can. Annual pass holders can renew. I guess they can renew 2 months ahead of their expiration, 1 month after their expiration, which is very, very interesting, right? And that might honestly be the case for legacy pass holders. If there is a pause here, might be first able to renew their passes under this kind of new system that they might establish in January. But Walt Disney World doesn't have to deal with this issue because, look, they have 4 parks and they don't have nearly the kind of local-driven population problems that maybe California or Anaheim has to deal with. And remember, this all kind of goes back to the inception of this thing. It was really around Epcot, funnily enough, right? Epcot was coming in with all these kind of restaurants and these different, facilities that they were kind of worried that, they'd have to kind of keep and remain filled. And that's when they first started offering a kind of annual pass holder program in kind of the way we think about it now. A couple of years later, in 1984, that's when it came over to Disneyland. And it was all about really the intention that they have now, filling in when the parks are empty. Well, the parks are empty anymore. They have unbelievable demand. So how do you deal with that? Now, there is a future in which maybe they aren't necessarily as demand heavy as they are now. And so that's why you want to have these annual pass holders in your back pocket so that, you can at least fill the parks when there's a drop off in tourist visitation. It's a back and forth balancing act, man, and there's agendas on both sides of this issue, I'm sure, arguing it up in the halls of TDA right now.
Oh yeah, no, you have the agendas of, like you said, the hotel industry or whatever with the lawyers, and their whole agenda. And then you have Disney. One of the things too, like I think that might be an option is to fill in those gaps, right? If you got rid of the annual pass thing and to fill in the off season, another option would just be to do. And I hate doing this because I do think heavy discounts cheapen your product. I do think that when you have a product that's a premium product, right? And you're offering discounted stuff like, hey, we're going to give you cheap tickets, cheap this, cheap that. It turns it into a cheap product, and
Right.
there's a reason why brands like, Mervyn's and like, Kmart aren't necessarily seen as like high quality, top notch, they're very discounty. And I would hate to see Disney go down that road, but if they were desperate and they didn't have the pass holders, you could do that. You could do the California discount day ticket thing cheap enough where they would probably get a lot of that clientele back,
Yeah, I do agree with you, and it's I think the most kind of modern example of brands kind of cheapening the product, right, is kind of the Subway thing, right? They went for $5 footlongs for years, right? And I guess franchisees were getting killed because of it. Yeah, but it became conditioned in the mind of the public to where they expected that price, and when they didn't get it, well, they kind of took off. So it's like it's one of those things that can really kind of get you into trouble. I do agree with you though. If you do get to a certain point where the price is a little bit too high, you can discount. We've seen them do this before with like hotels and so forth at Walt Disney World. They do that occasionally, right? Sometimes they go too far. You can always kind of step it back, at least temporarily, until people actually do pay the new price. But there are solutions that could be implemented to kind of mitigate these problems. Like we've said, the monthly payment system. I think that could mitigate some issues. Also, too, maybe having a more nuanced look at reservations. Hey, do we have to reserve for the every single day of the week? Can we just have reservations available for like the weekends and high times and stuff like that? That would, I think, mitigate some of these problems as well. Also, too, why are we, why is the entire day the same value from other days, right? Shouldn't it be maybe a points-based system where maybe Saturdays are a little bit, what is it, more expensive when it comes to some other days? We already see that with ticket holders have to pay more for Saturdays than they do for weekdays, and rightfully so, right? There's no fireworks on weekdays now and so forth, right? So can't we establish something like that at the annual pass holder level? There's a lot of different solutions that could be implemented, but again, I don't think we'll be seeing a lot of that stuff until this lawsuit situation is resolved.
No, 100%. I'm telling you, before we close it out, I'm telling you, Magic Key holders, it's gonna be a rough few months. This is not gonna. I don't think this is gonna be something that a lot of key holders are gonna be happy with. It's gonna get ugly before it gets better, So we'll see. But Dre, I want to thank you so much, brother, for coming on again and talking shop with us, talking shop with me, and just kind of breaking down this Magic Key situation, the future of the Magic Key, potential future of the Magic Key, potential.
Like I said, if we don't get any updates on August 25th, you know why that was the case, and you know when most likely we might see something in the future. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep, 100%. Now, if you can let everybody home know, sir, where they could find you on social media.
Hey, best place to interact with me is going to be at FashionGuy on Twitter. It's right down there. Just go ahead and type that in, and it should pop up right there. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh. Just squeeze it. Fresh right at the Grove.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for watching. Comment down below with your thoughts on the Magic Key program, what your predictions might be in regards to the future of the program, the class action lawsuit, all that stuff. We would love to hear from you. And as always, have a wonderful day.